Welcome back to the devlog. We've made it all the way to episode 2. In this episode, we're going to be looking at the items, sorting out all the different types of items, adding an inventory and equipping them to the character, at least in theory we are. So here is a lovely diagram I've created to demonstrate the structure of the items in my game, and by using inheritance I'll hopefully create a good working system to be able to implement an infinite amount of new items without much headache. So as you can see, every class will be an item at its core. So the base class will define the name and the sprites for all of the objects because everything's going to need them. If we move down to resources, that is going to cover the ammo, the buff and misc. So ammo is going to be obviously every ammo for the weaponry that you're going to be using in the game. A buff is a consumable item like a health potion or a stat boosting item. And misc is going to be any sort of extra items, so crafting materials, junk that you're going to sell to vendors, things like that just don't fall into any other category. So the equipment side contains wearables and weapons. All of these items will come with a level and rarity from common to legendary, which will grant the item extra stats and abilities. The wearables consist of armor and charms. These will improve your survivability and give you perks. And the weapons, which will be the biggest part of the game, will be a wide assortment of guns and melee. The idea behind this structure is to have an inventory that stores any item in the slot and can adjust according to the type of item. Now with this data, I'll also need a container or frame to store the instance of an item as opposed to storing it directly. This is down to the data being a scriptable object created in the editor and not to be edited at runtime. The item frame will be the instance of the item, which allows me to apply random stats, rarities, and any other elements without changing the base data. These item frames are what the inventory will actually store and interact with. So let's get into Unity and see what this will look like. Okay, so here we are in Unity and I've created all these simple classes, all set up nicely in folders, that follow the diagram that I drew up earlier. And if we go into Visual Studio, you see the item here, inherits from scriptable objects. So this is a class in Unity. It's basically for data storage and to define it in the editor. And as you can see, it stores the name, the sprite, stackable, and base price. This is something that all items will need. There will be more as I add on to it, sort of an item description, things like this, but for now this will be just fine. So here's the equipment class. It inherits from item, which means that it has all of these properties, but it doesn't actually add anything new itself. It's not until you get down to the next step. So weapon stores damage, attack rate, and animation clips. I haven't really made many of these yet, but this is here just so every gun can have its own unique animation style, so its own swing or its own firing. And it doesn't just use the same animations. And again, this inherits from equipment, which inherits from item, so it has all of the properties from item. And then down to gun, the final step, inherits from weapon, stores all of the stats and items that the gun is going to need to operate. And also here at the top has a create asset menu tag. This allows you to go into the editor. If I go into here, go to my weapons data, you can see there's a few guns here already. These are the predefined stats for the weapons, and these are all their base values. So if a gun is level 1 with no adjustments to it, these are the base stats. So these will be the things that will be taken into the weapon frame to be modified for then the actual use. But as you can see, we've got the item name and sprites, stackable and base price. All of those came from item. And then the rest of them all came from the weapon class. And if I go into right click here, create weapons, I can create a new gun. I'll call this one the potato gun. And then you can name it potato gun. It uses the sprite of this eyeball. It's not stackable. Price is worth 50 and so on. I can just fill in these values here. And there's a gun. That's how it's set up. So it's very easy to set up new guns. And then I can just add them to the drop tables for enemies, things like this, in the future. And then they'll just be available. And it should be very easy just to expand this library to have as many guns as I can think of, really. And then if we go into the item data again, go to resource. So this follows the same structure. I haven't really written out these classes yet. So they still have the default functions in them, which will be deleted and changed later. But for now, we've got the misc items. This one here has the asset menu tag, which creates a new misc item. It puts it in the resources tab of new, and it's called new misc item in the menu. And the order is 3. So all of these classes have an order. So ammo comes first, buff comes second in the right click menu, and miss comes third. And then if we go into our data, go to the craftables, right click, create resources misc item. We'll call this one the strawberry seeds. The name, again, inherits from item, strawberry seeds. Sprite will be just one sprite for the seed packet. It does actually need 2 sprites, but I haven't actually set it up so that this loads nicely yet. But that's fine. They're stackable and the base price of 2. So there we go. There's a strawberry seeds. And there we go. Same process of creating items for the game. So this system should be very easy to work with and expand using these scripted objects. And then all of these can be added to the frames that I'm going to sort out now. And then hopefully we have a functioning item system. Okay, so I've gone ahead and written out the first versions of my weapon frame system. From all of these scripts here, I do have an item frame interface, item frame, which is sort of the exact same structure as the item scriptable objects that were set up earlier, where item frame, it's an interface, is used, and then iWeapon frame inherits from item frame, and then I've got gun frame and melee frame. These both are the actual stats and generations and the instance of each weapon. So if we go into Visual Studio, I'll just quickly break this down. Let me actually open the item frame. Like I said, same concept as the original items, except this one is getters. So get sprites, get name, simple. iWeapon frame adds get rarity, get damage, get attack rate, and get the animations. So exact same concept as the data, but now this is just getting those data. And then in gun frame, this is a hefty script. It's not actually that long, and it's not even finished. But here, in the constructor here, this is this bit, the public gun frame. This is when the frame is actually made. So a gun is passed in along with 2 values, a min level and a max level. This is given sort of when the item is dropped or created in the game. You pass through the gun, and then you pass in, say, the enemy that you've killed is level 5. It can drop between level 4 and 6 items, for example. And then it goes ahead and sets all of that data from gun, sets it all locally. So I do this just to completely disconnect it from that original gun item. And this is because I can then save this data as itself. I'm not constantly loading the gun scriptable object again. I can save these in a text file and then just load them up again the next time the game is launched without having to check back that that scriptable object was correct. Because by this point, the damage will have changed, the value would have changed, the level, it has a rarity, generated everything. You don't need to know that original gun anymore. It's its own item. And then, down here with the generate stats, this is sort of placeholder at the minute. This is just sort of how I scale the items. So a bit of maths thrown in to change the damage, attack rate, based on the level. It's all based on level. And I'm trying to make it a nice scaling system. It doesn't work too well, but it's sort of enough. And these values can be tweaked at any time later on down the line. And then it's just a bunch of getters. So getting all of these stats and everything, load them up. And then down here to get the animation, haven't done this yet, but that is essentially the gun, and that is essentially what will be stored in the inventory. And then the same with melee, it's this exact same concept, generates it, except for this one I've also created another constructor which gives the rarity and the level just to be able to set it. I think I will do the same thing for the guns. I only did this to make sure that the starter weapon or the fists, when you have no items, you always have the fists. You never have nothing. But the fists will always be your level common rarity. They will never get any better. They never scale any differently. There's not going to be, too much like that. So that's why you pass in the level exactly and the rarity. And then if you pop into Unity, I have also created, if I grab the prefabs and the enemy, I've got here somewhere, units, enemies, strawberry. Here's the enemy. And then in stats, I've actually created a script called drop. Now, what this does is, I'll load it up. All it is, it's a drop table object and a function to drop an item. So here in the inspector, we have a list of drops where you can set the item and then the percentage. I've labeled it as percentage. It's not really. It's more like tickets. what it's doing is adding up every single one of these values and then picking a random number, and then that ticket will win. So, for example, the potato gun now has a 33% chance of winning and being dropped. But I'm going to get rid of that because these 2 items are the only ones that actually work for dropping in the minute. And I've also created the prefab for item drop, which is an empty item with an item frame world and a sprite. So if I go ahead and play, see if I've set this up right. When I kill an enemy, the game crashes. Hold on. Okay, so there was a weird issue going on with the scriptable objects. They weren't set correctly in the prefab, but now if I punch them, drops the strawberry seeds. It looks terrible. It's going to. This guy dropped a colt, so that was the 10% chance. He dropped strawberry seeds, and he dropped strawberry seeds. So there we go. That is the item system working to an extent. Obviously, there's still a lot of work to do on that, but for now, the item data is loading, and it's saying everything correctly, and this is now able to be equipped. I have made a little interactor script, which allows you to sort of collide with things. This was made 8 years ago. I'm just reusing it because it actually works. When you collide with things, it just highlights them yellow. It was just a color I picked. Again, that obviously needs work, but if you press F, I believe I bound it to. Yeah, I've picked it up. If I just pick all these up. And now, if I pause the play, there's no way of seeing the inventory in-game. If I pop to the player, go to stats, inventory, I can actually see it's not combining the stacks, which it should be doing. The inventory hasn't been written to do that. It's just creating new stacks every single time. But as we can see, we've picked up 4 sets of strawberry seeds and a colt. Now the strawberry seeds, the stack count, that's determined based on the level of the enemy. So the higher the level, we actually just drop more of them. The enemies aren't going to drop nicer things. You're going to have to move on to harder enemies to get the better items. But they will drop more of them if they are higher leveled. So these ones have dropped 20, 16, 20, and 6. So obviously this 6 one was a lower level. And then the Colt was level 2. He was the worst of all of them. So got a bit unlucky in that one. But there is an inventory working nicely. So I think the next episode is refining this inventory to make it actually function so that I can equip that item. Maybe I could drop an item out of my inventory and then make a basic UI so that I can see what's in the items without having to pause out of the game and go into the inspector here. But for now, that's working really well. So I'm going to wrap up here. I hope you enjoyed this video. Leave a like if you did. Subscribe for more of these because I do really want to make a lot more of these. I'm really enjoying making this game. It's so much fun making a game, and I think actually having this sort of extra step to it by making this devlog, it's really going to make the whole end product a lot better. If you've got any feedback on the videos or the game, something you'd like to see as a feature or just anything at all, leave it in the comments down below. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Cheers.